Okay. Hey everybody, I'm Steve. I'm going to present what can behavioural economics tell us about human mate choice and reproductive behaviour, which is a program of research that Ben and Benno and myself have been working on for probably 4 or 5 years. I'm going to show you some key results from about 4 or 5 papers with some of our industry partners there on the bottom. So we're going to look at what's central to mate choice, so attraction, preference and competition. Because, that's where babies come from, the middle of the Venn diagram, yeah. Attraction. So what makes us attractive? What do we think is attractive in others? Preference. Preference is incredibly important because our preferences inform our expectations. And if we want to think about love as utility, our expectation is the measure against our final outcome. And then competition, because we're interested in finding a mate, competing with others in the same sex or the opposite sex to pass on our genes. And we're economists and it's a competitive market, so that's why it's interesting. So let's start with attraction. What's attractive in a mate and how different are the sexes? Well, to be honest, this men are from Mars, women are from Venus is not correct. Men and women are very similar. And here's a 2021 study in which we asked about 7,500 online daters to tell us what do you find attractive in a mate? And we had 3 core categories here. So aesthetics, resources and personality, and they tapered down into 9 subcategories. And here in this figure we have the importance of each factor of sexual attraction relative to the other traits. Let me explain this here. So let's look at the bottom here, openness. So a positive value there tells us that, openness is more important to people relative to the other traits. And here we see, you look at the distributions and they're pretty similar. Men and women are pretty the same. Across all the distributions, I think, and I'm just going to touch a little bit on it here. We asked people about, is income important in attraction, and both men and women said, no, it's not important. So we'll come back to that one. How different are the sexes, and how different are our preferences for these particular traits? And this is the same study. And again, here we see on our y-axis, the positive is greater importance to males, and on our negative is more importance to females, and we have our age on our x-axis. And we see that for aesthetics, men across age value aesthetics more. Women across all ages, 18 to 65, say that resources are more important. And what's interesting here in personality is that women at a younger age say personality is more important, and that changes. Men say that personality is more important in older age groups. So that's what we think, or what we find attractive. What about what makes us attractive? What do we think makes us sexy? Here's another study, published in Applied Economics, where we asked about 3,000 heterosexual and bisexual online daters, what makes you sexy? What do you think makes you sexy? And the table on the left is women, the table on the right is men. And there's some uniform preferences there again. Males and females, if you're taller and you're thinner, you think that you're more attractive. And also too, if you're having more sex, that's a pretty good feedback loop for that you are sexy if you're having more sex. So let's go back to this income question, because no one thinks income's sexy, but men do. Men definitely do. Highly statistically significant. Men think the more income they make, the sexier they are. The IRSAD, relative socioeconomic advantage variable from the ABS, which measures things like household income, skilled occupation, joblessness, divorce rates, single parent families, rental prices. If you're a woman and you live in a more affluent suburb, you think you're sexier. So there's something going on there. Men and women, they say one thing, but So what about our preference? We're going to look at uniformly men and women value education in a partner. They think it makes you more attractive and they're also more attracted to it. So we're going to look at education and preferences for it. So here's another study we did back in 2018. And like I said, both sexes are attracted to education, but from our research what we find is that females value education in a mate at a greater rate across all ages than men do. It's because, arguably one of the reasons is education's a great proxy for income. Also too, education from a parental investment perspective is a great signal for an ability to problem solve and invest in offspring. So it's not surprising that we see that women who bear a heavier burden in reproduction than men do value these traits more. And again, here we have our age on our X and on our Y is the likelihood that an online data will state that education is important for them when they go searching on an online dating website. This, excuse me, was RSVP, so about 40,000 people. And across all ages, women are almost twice as likely to state a preference for education. What about, we're economists. We want to, you saw Gigi's presentation this morning. Let's think about these natural field experiments and ways that we could test to look about these preferences. Maybe if we take away the opportunity for a relationship, and we can do that when we can look at how women choose sperm donors. What if you don't want a partner and you just want to be a parent? Well, we have a way to tease out people's preferences for reproduction in their offspring by the way that women choose donors, because they're not interested in an interpersonal relationship, so the parental investment side falls away. And there's a study we did with Benno and Keith Harrison from Queensland Fertility Group, and we explored how quickly women chose particular characteristics when they selected their sperm donor. What we found was that men with degrees, undergraduate and postgraduate degrees, were selected faster by women. And if they were still studying, as well as having a degree, they were chosen even quicker. What's interesting here, but is that the height and the weight of the male who they were selecting the sperm from doesn't have any effect, which is really super interesting because your child's probably going to look like that person. And then 50-50. Then we've got competition, because again, we're economists. So let's look at, in a competitive market, in a supposedly open free market, are there competitive advantages for males and females? And here's another study we did with Rob from UNSW, where we looked at males' big 5 personality traits, and we looked at their weekly sex, so frequency of sex per week, and their number of offspring. Because again, from an evolutionary perspective, that's the end game. Having sex, passing on your genes. And what do we find? We found that for 4 of the 5 big 5 personality traits, greater variation in male personality types results in increased or decreased sexual activity and increased number of offspring, or decreased number. More extroverted men have more sex, have more offspring. Less agreeable have less sex. More conscientious, more sex. More open to experience, men have less offspring. What about for the women? There isn't that much variation. Yeah, and I mean, personality variation appears to play a far greater role in males successfully realising increased sexual frequency and more offspring, but not so much for women. And you might say, oh, so what? But I mean, this sort of speaks to some of these like biological factors like personality, may explain why we have these sort of cultural developments of, men are the instigators of interaction, men make the first move. And that greater variation in male personalities would then naturally be a biological adaptation that suited men to have more sex and have more offspring. What about different combinations of traits? Here are some thin-plated splines, so they're 3-dimensional models. Having more agreeableness and more extroversion, you get to have more sex, or the men having more sex. Higher conscientiousness, higher extroversion, again, more sex. But some combinations you actually see less. So more open men, more extroversion, you end up having less kids. So some of these combinations, are interesting to look at and think about. So that's to wrap sort of these 3 key areas of mate choice and how we can think about them using BE. I did a podcast last week with an over 50s dating website, and I was talking with some of the ECRs about it. Someone said to me, what can this research tell us about Kim Kardashian's current and past relationships? And I said, absolutely nothing. Yeah. Thanks to Ben Chan and Benno Torgler, and thanks very much, guys. Cheers.